The bellhop took the suitcase from the boy and showed him to the elevator. "Room 1305, said the bellhop. "Here's your key." The boy thanked him and stepped into the elevator. He pressed the button for the 13th floor. As the elevator ascended, he thought to himself, "I can't believe I'm staying in a haunted room. I hope nothing bad happens." The elevator doors opened and the boy stepped out into the hallway. He walked to the end of the hall and saw a door with the number 1305 hanging crookedly from the frame. He tried the doorknob. It was unlocked. The boy pushed open the door and stepped into the room. He looked around. The room was dusty and cobwebs hung from the corners of the ceiling. There was a single bed in the middle of the room with a faded blanket on it. In the corner, there was a wardrobe with a full-length mirror on the door. Next to the wardrobe was a writing desk with a phone on it. And opposite the desk was an armchair with a lamp on a small table beside it. The boy put his suitcase on the bed and sat down on the edge of the desk. Suddenly, he heard a knock on the door. He jumped and quickly turned around to look at the door. He thought, "Who could that be? I'm the only person who's supposed to be in here." He slowly got up and walked over to the door. He hesitated for a moment before putting his hand on the doorknob. He turned it and opened the door, but there was no one there. The hallway was empty. He looked down the hallway in both directions, but there was no one in sight. He closed the door and leaned against it, wondering if he was going crazy. He shook his head and told himself, "No, you're not crazy. You just need to get out of here." He started to walk away from the door, but then he heard a knock again. This time it sounded like someone was scratching their fingernails against the door. He stopped and listened. Then he heard it again. He took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. He told himself, "It's just the wind. That's all it is." But then the knocking started again, louder than before. He could feel the vibrations through the door. He backed away from the door and stared at it, his eyes wide with fear. He could hear the scratching now, along with what sounded like whispers. He didn't know how long he stood there, but finally the knocking stopped and the room was silent. He cautiously approached the door and put his hand on the knob. He turned it and opened the door a crack and looked out into the hallway. All he saw was the empty hallway and the closed elevator doors. He stepped out into the hallway and walked over to the elevator, still holding the door open with his hand. He looked inside and noticed something strange. There was no one in the elevator, but the doors were moving. He reached out and pressed the button to close the doors, but they wouldn't respond. They just kept moving up and down slowly. He backed away from the elevator and closed the door to room 1305. He leaned against the door, trying to catch his breath. Then he started to laugh. He laughed and laughed until he had no more strength and collapsed on the floor. No one knew where the boy went or how he escaped from room 1305. All they found was his suitcase in the corner of the room. And when the manager checked the registration, he found that the boy had never even been there.